Over the years, alien abduction stories have painted a picture, an eerie picture, of extraterrestrials interacting with humanity. There are claims of aliens stealing, swapping, and manipulating human souls, treating them as containers to be harvested. We'll dive into this theory today on MKUSUAL.
It's like MK Ultra, but more normal.
We got some flack this week for maybe having like a spiritualist bent on some of our. I don't think we have a bent. I think we have a worldview, but we're also exploring different worldviews. But today I want to explore stories or the idea of aliens not just being interested in our bodies, but being interested in our souls.
Our tight, meaty bodies.
We do have meaty bodies.
It's made up of meat.
This has been one of the things that has fascinated me for a really long time. The concept of soul harvesting is not particularly new. You could say the Grim Reaper is a soul harvester in a way. He's got his sickle. He's got his scythe.
Yeah.
But dealing with alien abductions has also been about as old as those stories themselves, particularly the ones with the Greys, a species often described in alien abduction cases, are shown in many to be harvesting souls for energy or for some greater cosmic purpose. I saw an interview, and this is going to be all over the place. I saw an interview earlier this week with a woman who claimed that when she was a child, her soul was swapped out. There's this concept called a walk-in where, traditionally the walk-in concept is that, let's say you're in a car accident. Let's say you suck your life. Okay, let's say your life sucks and you go and you jump off a bridge and you jump into the way of a semi-truck or something. Now, time slows down. You get hit by the car, you fall off the bridge, whatever. Your soul leaves your body. There are stories where, at that point, you don't just go into the light or become a ghost. You are presented with an option. This is almost a whole other show. I just want to throw this out here. You're presented with the option that this other spirit who doesn't want to be dead will just take your place. Almost like some kind of soul contract.
Hey man, let me get that body real quick.
That's literally kind of the idea of a walk-in. It's kind of like minor possession.
I want a J.O. one more time.
But so this lady was telling kind of a similar story, but it dealt with being abducted and then them swapping her original soul out for a new one. Then we're going to get into it, but there's the reverse where they put your soul, they'll cure you of cancer by creating a whole other body of you, and then they'll move your soul from your sick body and that's a case of a miraculous healing. That'd be like the alien example of a miraculous healing, is they literally gave you a different body. Of course, got to bring him up 6 times a week. David Icke has written extensively on reptilian alien beings, and often talks about them manipulating human souls. In his book, The Biggest Secret, he claims these entities view human souls as a very valuable energy source, and that the elite are in cahoots with these entities. His work links reptilians to the global elite, alleging that soul harvesting schemes are part of a larger power grab by a shadowy group of humans and extraterrestrials. This is what struck me about this. Whatever you feel about reptilian man David Icke, our culture does seem to push things that would weaken you. Mm-hmm. Drugs, alcohol, sexual licentiousness,
the media we consume,
the dumbing down of things. It does make you susceptible to a walk-in, or for what this would call a harvesting.
in a couple ways too.
Yes.
One, you're just too weak to say no, or you've been like debased and you don't value your soul in your life, or you don't even know that it is more than just the physical world, that there is
Well, they say psychics. If you're psychic out there, I'd love to have one on the show. They say that some of them can see the like extra dimensional beings that like feed off you.
okay.
So like if a certain psychic walked into like a heroin den, they would see like these ugly octopus type creatures hovering over every individual addict, like feeding off of essentially their soul.
Okay.
In their misery. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to throw a word out there, and I'm going to ask. Let's see if this came up. This reminded me immediately of a word that I've heard called loosh. Have you heard this word?
How's it spelled?
Loosh.
No.
Okay. I learned this word in the like spirit cooking kind of
Oh.
from that rabbit hole, but it originates from esoteric and metaphysical circles, particularly Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute, a researcher of out-of-body experiences and consciousness. Loosh refers to a form of energy generated by human emotions, especially negative ones such as fear, suffering, and pain.
That's their food.
Yes.
I think that's where this entity thing comes in, yes.
Some theories suggest that Loosh is harvested by higher dimensional entities or interdimensional beings for sustenance or control.
Loosh is that's essentially, I'd call it soul. Loosh, or like a life force based off your experiences, could be that could be the truth behind it.
Yeah, or that could be like the soul interacting with this.
The energy created when you rub up against this other dimension. Yeah.
He, in a book in the 1970s called Far Journeys, described Earth as a energy farm to produce Loosh. According to Monroe, certain non-physical entities, sometimes likened to archons, reptilians, or extra-dimensional beings, feed off the emotional energy of humans, much like we consume food.
Wow.
Fear, trauma, emotional distress, mass media and fear manipulation, religious and occult practices, etc. The Gnostics talk about non-physical entities manipulating their emotions.
This is kind of a Gnostic idea. The idea that you're on a prison planet being fed off of spiritually.
Yeah, the archons are like the overseers, and I can't remember where that word comes from.
Yeah, the archon, the ruler of the age,
okay, yeah,
that would be the prison guards, the people who design the prison, whether it's a flesh prison or whether or not we're trapped here energetically.
Okay, Nag Hammadi texts.
Interesting. I think Loosh. I think that's really kind of the idea, other than this interview I saw earlier this week that sent me down this direction. Now, I'm a big Whitley Strieber guy. I listen to Dreamland quite a bit. He's, of course, the author of Communion. He's always cited as the author of Communion, but he's written so much more. I mean,
that was like his kind of breakthrough into
this world, because it was telling his story. Prior to that, he had written like books that became movies, and he still writes fiction that becomes movies, like The Day After Tomorrow, and I believe he had at least one horror movie under his belt, maybe two, before Communion came out.
Okay.
But he mentions times when the Greys siphon off human life force, or Loosh, or soul energy, and mentions that abductees often feel drained of their vital energy, physically and emotionally exhausted after the encounter. And believes that through his analysis, there may be evidence that aliens are after not just our body, but our soul.
Aliens come down and make you shoot a big spiritual rope, a big cosmic wad.
Well, there's a lot of encounters where they call us containers. There's this documentary, and this is only roughly related, where it's the South American town where this UFO crashed some kind of U.S. operator or agency showed up, start cleaning it up. One alien got away and was brought to a local hospital. Have you ever heard this story?
I maybe.
Well, these little girls got to the alien, or whatever you want to call it, got to the gray before, and he was like severely injured. Got to him right before they take him to the hospital, and I know. But the guy who encountered this thing, by the way, everybody got some kind of weird fungus and like got sick, and a bunch of people died from this. But it's one of the better stories of this, is attested to by so many different people and pieces of evidence. But one of these people in this encounter, whether the girl or the doctor, I don't remember which one, describes kind of looking into the alien's eyes, and he felt pity from it. And he said there was like a psychic message to him that it feels bad for us because we don't know what we are. And when I saw that interview, it's one of those intuition moments. My every alarm bell in my brain and in my soul went, farmed, we're farmed. That's the look you would give a stuck pig.
Yes.
Or if you were hurt and one of your cows came up to you in a pasture and you realized you were at the mercy of the cow, but you were going to slaughter the cow, that's the feeling that psychically you would give the cow. It's one of those things.
I used to work next to a guy who butchered pigs, and they scream like they're alive. When you kill them, it is...
Like they're people, you mean?
Oh, it is horrifying. I thought it was someone getting murdered the first time I heard it. I literally froze at work, and they're like, oh, it's just the pigs. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that happens every time. They're like, yeah, you'll get used to it. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I can't even like mimic the sound.
I can't believe I'm laughing at this. This is like PETA's worst nightmare, my reaction. Go ahead, scream as loud as you can. We never had a good scream on this show.
I couldn't even do it. I feel like if I tried, I would like rupture my vocal cords.
Dude, even just pigs squealing is like a horrendous sound.
Oh, yeah. This was like...
Screaming. Oh, God. But what if we're farmed, dude? I mean, we just did this... At some point this week, we've either done it, we're going to do this episode about smart cities and how we're being led into a giant human slaughterhouse, essentially. But this could be the planet Earth. We also have the episode this week about the moon, and the moon being an observation post for some kind of higher power. These ideas could all be coming together, that Earth is like the smart city slaughterhouse of the galaxy for our Loosh.
And this made me... So if all they need is the energy created through fear, trauma, emotional distress, blah blah blah, we don't even... Do we need physical bodies for that? Or could they just...
I think you would. Because I think that you would need...
Because when you have a certain emotion, certain chemicals are produced. That's what you're experiencing, is like the biochemical reaction in your body.
Adrenochrome. Oh no, we're shadow banned. We said the A word. There could be a spiritual sauce. Loosh could be like a spiritual adrenochrome. I think you would have to be in a body. You couldn't just farm a soul, because when you're outside the body, you're not having a temporal experience.
Okay, yeah.
The only way I believe you could have true suffering that's different and ongoing, and you can...
In the context of a temporal experience.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking maybe there would be a way to... I probably shouldn't say this. Maybe they haven't thought of it, but to download our souls and then just torture us on a hard drive somewhere.
Oh.
And would that generate... would that be that our soul would be... I don't know. This is above my pay grade, but...
I want to give a shout out to Nigel Kerner, author of The Song of the Greys, Gray Aliens and the Harvesting of Souls. He argues that they are biologically engineered entities that are harvesting human souls to sustain their own existence. most people will tell you that have had a psychic or spiritual experience with these things that the Greys don't have souls.
I've heard that.
And they also, everybody will tell you that they have a higher master, whether it's the praying mantis people or the reptoids.
They're like a biological robot in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that too.
And they're serving something more sinister who is afraid to show itself to us.
To me, that's scary, but then also immediately I'm like, the pity of that one Gray having pity for us not knowing what we are. It probably means we're very powerful beings.
Oh, yes.
Like our souls do have a weight and a power to them, that we are significant more than we can probably fathom.
Yes.
And that going to a public school and saying you must get a degree and perform a task for the rest of your life is pretty like subversive to that idea. You would believe that you are just a physical being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm going to get into some history here because it just goes around and around. I could just list off. I'm just going to list off. You know, we already did Whitley and we already did David Icke. I'm just going to list off. There's Carl. She comes up a lot for me. I like her. I read 2 or 3 of her books. There's old, what's her name? Carla Turner, Dr. Carla Turner. She believes it has something to do with the soul. Travis Walton, very famous experiencer.
Oh, yeah. His story's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and he's a very credible. While on board his UFO during his experience, he described an out-of-body experience that felt like a soul extraction. Betty and Barney Hill, the original abductees in modern times, believed it had to do with spiritual manipulation. John Mack, psychiatrist and expert on alien phenomenon, explored this theory in his book Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens. He documents cases in which experiencers felt like their bodies were usurped and their souls were replaced by alien entities. And he's the one who came up with the walk-in phenomenon, linked to the concept of soul exchange, which originally comes from Ralph Blum's walk-ins, but Mack applied it to the UFO terms. It's the idea of souls transferring from one body to another, often during like traumatic experiences. Other people, David Jacobs, historian and abduction researcher who wrote The Threat and Walking Among Us, proposing that aliens are integrating hybrids into human society, and this is why they're interested in the soul. Them and Nigel, already threw out Nigel Kerner. There's something. This is not, we're doing like a baseline. This is like a baseline episode where we're like, here's a concept. Because this comes up so much, and we're going to do so many episodes about this concept and these individuals' different ways of researching it and the different theories, that I just want to lay the groundwork for our viewers and for you, because this just comes up so often.
Yeah, I feel like I have an okay macro perspective on this, like, but you have a really good like detail, like individual stories that you also have a cosmology of, but I don't have that. So
the cosmology is something I'm constantly trying to piece together. I'll just sit and I'll watch.
If I understand, I'm just trying to say, if I understand anything, it is kind of an overview of the big picture or like the players, but not necessarily like specific things. So for me, I appreciate this.
And there's historically, you already brought it up, the Gnosticism. Some Gnostic sects believe, particularly the Sethians, that Earth is a prison world controlled by the demiurge, false god who trapped divine souls into material bodies, and the goal of the human life was to escape this. Philip K. Dick and the Archons. Philip K. Dick, sci-fi author, proposed that Earth was under the control of malevolent forces that kept humans in a false reality. He echoes those Gnostic ideas. You could argue that the simulation hypothesis has something to do with this. I think earlier you said something about like, could we just be being farmed from a computer?
Yeah, it made me think of the Matrix, because like that's why I was asking the "do we need a body" question, because like you would have this experience in a digital world, but your body would react to those stimuli
True,
and
yes.
produce that. So like, yeah, you probably do need a body.
In some of Nigel Kerner's work, abductees were claimed they were shown visions of reincarnation as a forced recycling process, trapping you on Earth. And that the white light at death, often described in near-death experiences, is interpreted in some theories as a soul trap mechanism. You're going down the old...
Carol Ann, do not go into the light.
You're going down the goldfish in the toilet to go back out and to become a new goldfish. But there's just so many. There are so many stories of people being on board these crafts and they see bodies being grown.
Okay, yeah, like they're in tubes of
Yes.
fluid, and that's almost like I had seen that so many times in sci-fi movies that it's like when someone actually says that, you're like, well, they just saw that sci-fi movie, and that, but then like, it's like art mirroring reality, not.
Well, here's something. All right,
Yeah.
so in this Nigel Kerner work, we know that abductions, other than recently, it has been discovered that it tends to favor slightly higher IQ people, and that it tends to favor people with this slightly larger part of their brain, which we're not sure because there's no way to study someone before they were abducted, or we'd have to start very early on the population. We're not sure if aliens are targeting people with that part of the brain being bigger, or if somehow they're doing something during the abduction experiment with implants or these biological tests to grow that part of your brain. And by the way, that part of your brain is, and this is not woo-woo, has been shown to be associated with people with like slightly more psychic abilities.
Okay.
We might actually have a physical measure for people that are more likely to be prone to psychical abilities. And where was I going with that? Well, there's those type of stories. There's the body growing stories, and then we know that they're kind of messing with people who might be bumping up against that reality more. And then let's say the Greys don't have souls, but it's some kind of farming thing. I mean, and we're trapped in this white light. Oh, where was I going? Okay, wait. Here's where I was going. Those are the two things that right now are like slightly involved with how you can predict if someone's been abducted or not. But overall, one of the main things in the UFO literature, no matter who you ask, is that it does not discriminate in your walk of life. It gets the janitor, it gets the MIT student, it gets the bum on the corner. You know what? It does not care very much.
It gets a religious person. It gets an atheist.
Yep. It doesn't matter your race, your sex, your anything. It might have something to do with this part of the brain, but that part of the brain could be in many different people. So here's what I think is interesting. This is Nigel Kerner. So he's having people of all walks of life tell him this ancient Gnostic idea.
After their experience.
Yeah, so it's like,
Okay.
how many people have ever read Gnostic literature? How many? You know, most of it was destroyed by the church, but some of it still exists. But
It was also found in 1945.
what was?
The Nag Hammadi texts.
Well, Nigel Kerner is a modern, but how many people have read the Nag Hammadi? I guess where I'm going with this
Right.
is
Well,
like,
that's what I'm saying. It wouldn't have been like, it wasn't like an ancient text that has been taught through. It was like discovered.
yes.
So like, yeah, I agree. Like, how many people would?
But all the time in culture, you see, go to the light, go to the light, go to the light. That's our culture. But then these people have this experience and they say, I got to tell someone that the light is a trap. It recycles your soul. And that happens to be tied to this ancient, forgotten sect of these Sethians or these Gnostic. It's like all those people of those different walks of life can't be walking around with that idea subconsciously. They had some experience where some entity told them that. That to me is insanely frightening, because that would tend to add credence, at least to the fact that they've had an experience where somebody told them that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, this is something kind of interesting. Carl Jung became involved in translating the Nag Hammadi texts, and he was like a big archetype guy. Was trying to understand, like, well, I don't know.
That's very interesting. Carl Jung wrote a book on UFOs.
Really?
Yeah. He was really into spiritualism and UFOs, and how they dealt with archetypes and stuff like that.
The Archons enslave humanity through materialism and deception.
And see, what's crazy is I don't personally subscribe to that being the nature of reality. But something is telling people that. At the very least, something is telling people that.
Well, it's almost like you let the inmates run the prison. They'll guard it. They'll take care of it. It's theirs, and they won't leave.
Yeah, that's
so, like,
true.
There's like a... that's how I've taken it. Like, there are people who come in from... It's like the 100th monkey theory or whatever. The one monkey goes up and tries to get the banana, and it's like sprayed with water. And then they take... After multiple generations of this, no monkey will go up and even try to get the banana because they've been taught by all the ones left in the room
not to do it.
The new one will see the banana and go, and they'll all stop it.
Oh.
So, like, after multiple, like, iterations of that test, they won't even try to, like, go outside, so to speak, or look at God or try to find, you know. So they're like, that's the Archons trapping us. Even if you come in and you have that light in you still, and you are seeking, all the people around us will be like, do not disrupt. This is all we have. Don't disrupt this. And it's also fed to us in our media and our culture, and, like...
My computer just started recording us, and I don't know why.
Well.
I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. That was weird because my phone was ringing, but that's a good point, Nick. That's a very good point. This is a scary... Dude, we're all going to have to face this someday. Unless you just die and it's black like before you were born, odds are, if you listen to people, you're going to have a choice. You're going to have a limited time to go into this portal or not. What a choice we're all going to have to make.
And this is like...
You're going to have to take everything you've learned, this discussion, every time you've been to church, you're going to have a limited time.
It's all preparation for that moment.
And part of you might be like, it's the recycling chute. And another part of you might be like, this is my chance to either be old spooky ghost or go to heaven.
Or even as simple as, like, the light seems way less scary than dark. If it's just like a binary, you know.
I would hope that like maybe this is why morality is so important, that your heart will tell you.
Right.
You know, there's certain Orthodox mystics who say that heaven and hell are the same place. But for those who like the light, it's just like this beautiful spring day. You're walking around the light. And then for those who are used to the crack den, the light is the most awful, burning, exposing. You are who you are when you die. You're either a person who can walk in the light or a person who tries to cower from it.
Yep.
And I've often thought that was a very interesting and also frightening idea.
It makes me want to be accountable.
Did you bring
To
up
my
Robert?
choices.
Oh yeah, exactly. Did you bring up Robert Monroe this episode, or was that in a different?
Yeah.
Okay,
He was the one who like coined the term loosh.
so he brought up Loosh. He's the guy who created the out of body experience place out on the East Coast, right?
I don't remember where it is, but yeah, he like studies this. He teaches like psychic.
It's the hemisync. It's the
Yep.
binaural beats. Okay, so this is interesting. So in the CIA document about binaural beats that references him, it has a similar idea to those Orthodox mystics. And it scientifically breaks down, someday we'll do a whole thing about that document, but it breaks down how when you die, your energy can't cease to exist, and who you are as a person can't cease to exist because it's energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed, nor information. So your energy and information are like inexorably tied. So essentially your soul or whatever. And he describes the afterlife, or the CIA document or whatever, says that essentially in the afterlife, you are experiencing the inevitability or the immovable essence of the universe, which is the same for everybody. We all have this, the source. It calls it the source, where like there is no time, there is no space, it's endlessness. It's the source, and so your essence goes to the source, and then you're all experiencing the same thing, but the real reality is you can't change, because change can only happen in this lower realm where there is time and space. So essentially, heaven, hell, the afterlife, nirvana is you living with yourself. But you can't grow or change. So if you die hung up and angry, you're going to be that forever, just scientifically. And if you die loving and accepting that there's good in the world, then you're that forever scientifically. It all comes out of Robert Monroe's ideas. But then he seems to believe that in the Loosh farming hypothesis.
So it would be like people who died angry. Maybe these are these higher dimensional entities, like not bound by a body, but they're like stuck at this level, and they need.
Oh, explain that.
Well, I should have formed the thought before I started trying to say
I
it
do that
out
all
loud.
the time. That's what this show is.
Maybe I'll have to come back to that.
Well, no,
It's
the
like-
idea is that when you get there, it's the same as the Orthodox, like the people who can walk in the light and the people who can't. You're both experiencing that, but you're experiencing it as you are who you die. It's kind of like these people it's the trash compactor recycling, and that's the same as the Gnostics. It's this Orthodox mysticism mixed with this Robert Monroe hemisync.
So it's like, okay, I think I know where I was going. So like we have to come back here to change. We have to have a temporal experience for our decisions to have consequence. And then through that, we either grow and become a higher, we become spiritually enlightened, or we fall down. But there's people who are like stuck in some intermediary place who are trapping us here. Like you go through this experience, and then when you leave, that's the destination. But they're like, do you want to buy a timeshare in Florida on your way out of here?
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like-
yeah. Well, that's the other question is like, on what level of being are these?
That's what I'm
things?
trying to. That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort out. So like, who is doing it, or what?
That's the question. Yeah.
Because it's like an entity that is doing it, not a consequence of the universe.
Well, it's a rigmarole in the system.
Yeah.
So like if
It implies an intent, not a like. It implies intent, not a consequence of the environment or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's creating like an economic system out of souls.
Yes.
Well, you could do this with a dead body. Okay, so you could do a lot with a dead body, but you could picture.
We've literally. Sorry, I'm gonna. Derail.
Well, okay. Well, when a deer dies out in the middle of nowhere, what's going to happen? It's going to disintegrate. It's going to become part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that deer. It becomes the grass. It becomes the worm. It becomes...
Feeds a couple coyotes.
Its gases go in the air. It feeds a couple coyotes. Okay, now what if you ran a company where you go up and you pick up all the dead deers and you throw them in your big deer meat machine? This to me is like the human soul machine. You're like capturing what's already a natural process, but instead of letting it go back into the subframe of reality, you're dumping it back into this. You're recycling it into the system, like the way that we recycle water. Or so, what if the way Robert Monroe describes it? Okay, what if they're both true? What if the Orthodox mystics and Robert Monroe, what if they are correct about what happens minus interference when you die?
Okay.
You go to heaven or hell based on who you are when you die. However, something higher than us but lower than that has figured out a way to catch you on your way. And then just like we do anything else, any technology, any invention, they make an economy out of it. They figure out how to sell it.
It's an exploit.
It might, a factory farm, when you listen to a vegan, sounds a lot less like a job and a product than it does hell on earth. Mm-hmm. But to the people who work there, and for everyone who went and I bought a pound of pork today, it's part of the economy, baby. What if the praying mantis people are they're in the freaking soul business? They don't have the power to end you. Yeah, they can't destroy you, but they can recycle you. They might sell you.
I always thought the mantids were like not malevolent, but that could be
the mantids were nice. You're pro mantid?
Well, not malevolent. Like they were at worst neutral.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just saying the mantids because that's one candidate for who controls the grays.
Oh,
I
see.
But then you really would, if you're the gray who looks at the doctor, you really would have pity in your heart.
Right.
Because you're like, one, you're more powerful than me, but I'm a lot smarter than you. And I'm never going to let you know. So it's the elephant when they tie the strings around them when they're babies. And then they can never move their feet. They can never trample anyone because they don't know that their feet, that they're more powerful than the trainer. That could be the whole thing behind it. There might not even be a thing with a soul behind this. They could be a self-organizing, synthetic, silicone-based,
like a Borg
AI life form that has scientifically detected a soul and apprehends what it is, but could never have one or comprehend it. And we're just one commodity, just like gold, just like silicone, just like anything. I'm running out. I'm going in circles.
Well, I mean,
someday we'll bring this concept will come up with individual researchers and stories.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of angles too.
There's so many angles.
Because there's scientific research, there's spiritual exploration of this, there's records of this idea into ancient history.
That to me, like the whole reason I believe in alien abduction is because the stories are so consistent. And they have elements that you probably wouldn't make up if you were a lumberjack or whatever.
Right.
And so that makes me believe in this soul thing because, one, it's part of that phenomenon, but two, it's not something somebody would make up. If you believe the media, Independence Day, The Day the World Stood Still, War of the Worlds version of these things come from Mars and they're taking you into their ship and they want your semen, where does the soul recycling plant come from?
Right.
And if you never read these Gnostic texts, why are they telling you that? Or why do they want you to believe that? Anyway, well, final thoughts, I guess. Those are mine.
Don't go quietly.
Yes. like, no. He's still never gotten to their motivation other than they might just be used soul salesmen.
Well,
or they feed off they're serving something
if they were a
else.
malevolent entity, that sounds like what they'd end up spending their time doing.
Always come back to these ideas. Well, we love you. Try to be a good person. Bye.
Bye.